The old witness seat beside Alpha King Corven Thale released moonlight like an unpaid oath 3 breaths after he ordered Alda Fenrose cut from the feast table. Silver radiance slipped through a fracture in the carved back and spread across the black stone. Alda stood behind the nobles with the severed cord of her place token hanging from her wrist. Royal Aunt Sabine Thale held the ceremonial shears. "A mistake has been corrected," she announced before the Blood Moon Court. "The feast table recognizes blood, land, and lawful pact standing. Alda Fenrose possesses none." The herald removed Alda's chair. The oath clerk scraped her name from the seating ledger. A servant carried away her untouched cup. Alda was ordered to remain behind the nobles so every visiting alpha could see the difference between being useful to the crown and belonging beneath it. For 12 years, Alda had copied marriage treaties, border promises, adoption bonds, inheritance transfers, and surrender oaths into the royal archive. 3 of those treaties had kept Corven's first winter from becoming a civil war. He had never asked whose hand restored the missing clauses. He had only signed where her ink had made the crown safe. But the law called her an oath-bound servant. She could write a promise. She could not witness one. She could record a seat. She could not possess one. He had watched Sabine cut Alda's place token away. Then he had spoken with the quiet finality that made rival alphas lower their eyes. "Stand behind the court." Alda obeyed. Not because he was right. Because 6 armed wolves guarded the doors. And defiance that ended before it could be heard was not courage, it was waste. Now the witness seat shone with something the feast had failed to bury. The first thread of light reached Corven's plate. The meat darkened where it touched. Sabine lowered the shears. "Remove the relic." 2 guards approached. The seat turned away from them. Its silver legs scraped across the stone without a hand touching them. It pivoted until its open place faced Alda. A breath moved through the hall. Not a gasp. Something smaller and more dangerous. The sound of people realizing that fear might soon require witnesses. Corven rose. The air tightened beneath his command. Nobles bowed their heads. Guards stopped mid-step. Alda did not lower her eyes. "What did you do?" Corven asked. "Nothing." "She handled the seating ledger," Sabine said. "I copied it. You touched the royal names. With the gloves your office issued. You entered this hall carrying low-born oathcraft." Alda lifted her hands. "If I possessed enough power to command royal furniture, I would have begun with a door." One young noble choked on a laugh and looked down. Corven did not smile. "Come forward." Sabine turned toward him. "The Blood Moon table has already rejected her standing. The table has done nothing." The witness seat scraped forward, crossing the exact distance Alda's place had been removed. Then the shadow beneath Corven's throne moved. It stretched past his boots, too dark for the candlelight, and broke away from his body. A black muzzle emerged first, then shoulders, then the immense outline of a wolf larger than any beast in the royal kennels. Its body was darkness edged in silver. Its eyes opened beneath the table, 2 pale, exhausted moons. Corven gripped the throne arm. Pain crossed his face. The wolf shadow had not appeared beside him. It had been torn out of him. Something in Corven had been forced to answer what his mouth had ordered silent. Sabine stepped back. "Call the moon priests." "No," Corven said. The black wolf passed between the nobles. Men who had faced border wars drew their feet beneath their chairs. It ignored them all. At the witness seat, it looked once at Corven. The king and the shadow shared the same pale eyes. But the wolves held something. His did not. Recognition. Not of a mate. Not of a queen. Of an oath Corven's crown had been eating from while refusing its witness a seat. The wolf climbed onto the silver seat and sat. The released moonlight gathered beneath its paws. Alda's severed cord tightened around her wrist. The fibers twisted together and pulled toward the table. Sabine raised the shears. "Could it?" Alda stepped back. "No." The word left her quietly. It still crossed the hall. "You forget your station," Sabine said. "No." "You made certain everyone saw it." The guards waited for Corven's command. He gave none. "What is that chair?" he asked Sabine. "The ceremonial witness seat," Sabine said. "An obsolete companion relic. Witness law is not companion law," Alda said. "One decorates a ruler, the other restrains him. You have no authority to interpret royal law. I copied enough of it to recognize when a definition has been cut down to protect the person seated above it." The wolf shadow lowered its head. It was not a growl. A refusal. The silver cord pulled harder. Alda reached the table before it cut her skin. Moonlight spread beneath her fingers. Ancient letters emerged from under years of polish and royal seals. Alda recognized the hand. Her mother had taught her the old witness script before illness took her voice and the crown took everything else. "Read it," Corven said. Sabine moved between them. "The script is forbidden. Move." The alpha command rattled every silver cup. Alda kept her hand on the table. "Before crown, blood, mate, heir, or warlord," she read, "the lawful witness shall be seated." Corven's wolf shadow remained where the law said the witness should sit. A second line emerged. "The witness seat may not be removed while an oath remains unpaid." Corven came around the table, but his wolf did not return. "What oath?" "I don't know." "She lies," Sabine said. Alda turned toward her. "No. I have simply spent 12 years copying the kind of truth your laws taught everyone not to ask for." The seat aligned itself with Alda. Beneath the wolf shadow, the silver crest split along a concealed seam. A hidden name appeared inside the carving. Fenrose. Alda had never seen her family name written in royal silver. Neither had the court. Corven stared at it as though the letters had opened beneath his own skin. Then his wolf placed one black paw over the name. The mark beneath it began to burn. The chair had not chosen Alda. It had no mercy, no preference, and no power to name a bride. It remembered only the witness debt carved into its law. It had remembered her. The chair had not chosen Alda. It had remembered a debt the court had eaten around for years. The black wolf shadow remained seated over the Fenrose name. Corven stood 3 paces away, one hand pressed beneath his ribs. The color had drained from his face, though his voice remained steady. "No one touches the cord." Sabine turned toward him. "Your Majesty, the attachment may be contaminating the seat. Then it remains until I know what it binds." The guards lowered their hands. The silver fibers tightened around Alda's wrist. The witness seat recognized an unfinished procedure, not a woman it intended to crown. Sabine set the ceremonial shears on the table. "Witness law has been obsolete for 3 generations. Obsolete law still binds an unpaid oath," Alda said, "only if the claimant possesses lawful standing. I have claimed nothing. You copied the feast ledger this morning, with 2 clerks watching, and now an erased family name appears beneath the king's wolf. That sounds like a reason to examine the record, not cut my wrist free of it." The wolf shadow lowered its head. Corven's breath caught. It stayed where the old law said the witness should sit. A tremor passed through Corven's fingers. Sabine saw it. So long as the shadow remains separated, the crown is vulnerable. End this before rival alphas understand what they are seeing. "They understand enough," Corven said. "My wolf refused the removal. He had not called Alda lawful. He had not offered her a seat. But he had admitted publicly that the refusal belonged to him. Bring the feast, law ledger." The oath clerk hesitated. "Which edition, Your Majesty?" "The oldest one this court still keeps." "Those volumes contain repealed provisions," Sabine said. "Then bring the repeal record with it." The clerk bowed and left under guard. Corven remained standing because sitting without his shadow would have made the separation look worse. His shoulders stayed square, but each breath came shallower. Alda watched the wolf's silver-edged ribs begin to thin. "What happens if it remains apart from you? That is not your concern. It is sitting on my family name. It is still my wolf. Then call it back." His jaw tightened. The wolf did not move. Alda understood before he answered. He could not. Sabine stepped closer to the throne. "This is why forbidden witnesscraft was removed. It divides authority from instinct and turns the king's beast against him." "No," Alda said. "It forces authority to stand beside what instinct remembers. You speak as though you understand royal wolves. I understand records altered after the fact." The doors opened. The oath clerk returned, carrying a broad ledger bound in cracked white hide. 2 guards bore it between them. They placed it at the far end of the table. Sabine reached for the clasp. Corven stopped her with one look. The clerk opens it. The man released the iron hooks. Old parchment exhaled dust and bitter moon oil. "Blood Moon Feast Law," he read. "Founding copy. Revised under King Corven Thale." "Open the seating articles," Alda said. "You do not direct royal clerks," Sabine replied. Corven kept one hand against his ribs. "She directs him where the witness law is concerned. Not equality. Not trust." temporary authority over the question that was draining his wolf. The clerk turned the pages. The early feast table was drawn as a circle, not the long-ranked board before them. Each place carried a title: Crown, War Command, Grainkeeper, Outer Pack Speaker, Blood Heir, Mate, Claimant. One narrow column stood beside the crown. Lawful Witness. The name beneath it had been scraped away. Alda leaned closer. The parchment fibers had been shaved in 3 short strokes, then polished with moon oil. She knew the blade pattern. Archive correction knife. The clerk looked ill. Correction knives are used for lawful amendments, Sabine said. Not on founding parchment. Amendments are written beside the original text. The article was repealed. Then the name should remain visible beneath the repeal. Sabine faced the visiting nobles. The Fenrose line forfeited witness standing when it entered hereditary service. Servant blood cannot restrain a royal feast. A servant oath can bind labor, Alda said. It cannot travel backward and erase what the blood witnessed before service began. You assume the removed name was Fenrose. The seat revealed Fenrose. The seat revealed a word under forbidden influence. The scrape matches the 3-stroke correction used in the lower archive, which you know because you handled restricted records. Because I repaired what your clerks damaged. Repair does not make you witness, Sabine said. It only proves how often servant hands were allowed near dangerous records. Corvin's knees nearly gave. He caught the table edge. Silver darkness peeled from the wolf's flank. If the record stays closed, Alda said, your wolf will keep holding the missing place. Corven looked at the clerk. Recover the erased text. Silver restoration requires a lawful witness. The hall went still. There is no lawful witness, Sabine said. Alda raised her bound wrist. That is the question the seat has already opened. Corven looked from the cord to the fading wolf. Restore the column under her hand. He was not restoring Alda's place. Not yet. He was trying to learn why his own wolf had chosen the missing one over him. The clerk placed a silver restoration leaf over the scraped parchment. Alda pressed 2 fingers to its edge. The silver leaf burned cold against her skin, and the cord at her wrist tightened until the old scrape from Sabine's shears opened again. A thin line of blood darkened the fibers. The old ink returned in fragments. Fenrose. Then a title beneath it. Seat Oath Witness. A final line emerged in royal silver rather than archival black. Royal Wolf Stabilization Oath. The clerk swallowed. Corven stared at the words. Alda read the final notation. Unpaid. The word did not say what had been owed. It did not say who had refused payment. It only proved the feast had continued around a debt the crown had never settled. The wolf had not found its mate. It had found the missing witness to its king. The ledger had not named Alda Queen. It had named the debt keeping Corven's wolf from returning. The black wolf shadow remained in the witness seat, thinner around the ribs. Silver darkness loosened from its flank and vanished before touching the floor. Corven stood beside the feast table with one hand braced against the wood. Sabine looked at the restored line. Royal wolf stabilization oaths were fulfilled generations ago. Alda kept 2 burned fingers against the silver leaf. Then bring the fulfillment record. The founding families received land, protection, and hereditary service under the crown. Service is not payment if the oath promised standing. You have not established what payment required. The oath clerk swallowed. Corven's voice remained controlled. Explain the oath. The clerk bowed over the ledger. Early Alpha Kings believed the royal wolf could separate from the crowned mind during blood moon feasts. The lawful witness sat beside the crown and renewed the boundary between command, memory, and instinct. The witness controlled the wolf? A visiting Alpha asked. No. The witness confirmed that the crown had not silenced an oath the beast was required to remember. Alda looked at the shadow. Corven's wolf had not abandoned him. It had gone to sit where his crown had left a debt. What was the payment, she asked. The clerk turned a brittle page. Lawful standing at every blood moon feast. Protection from hereditary binding. The right to challenge any royal oath before it entered pack law. Unpaid did not mean coin. It meant standing. Sabine folded her hands. Those rights were commuted when the Fenrose line entered royal service. Show the commutation. It may be held in the servant rolls. Then bring them. Sabine's gaze sharpened. You speak as though an obsolete clause grants you authority over the royal archive. The unfinished oath grants this procedure authority over everyone in the hall. The wolf shadow lowered its head. Corven's knees bent. He caught himself against the table. The pale light in the wolf's eyes dimmed with him. Sabine stepped closer. End this. The king cannot remain divided while rival pacts are present. Alda lifted her bound wrist. Then prove the debt was paid. Corven ordered the renewal columns and servant rolls brought forward. Sabine turned to the nobles. Seadoth witness was a blood office, not a personal inheritance. Even if Fenrose once held it, that does not make Alda lawful. Agreed, Alda said. The answer unsettled Sabine. The ledger named my family. It has not yet named me. Corven studied her. You understand the distinction. I have spent 12 years protecting distinctions your court finds inconvenient. 3 narrow volumes arrived. The oath clerk opened the blood moon renewals. Each feast carried a line for crown, ruling wolf, and lawful witness. The earliest pages bore Fenrose in silver ink. Then the entries changed. Fenrose remained, but the witness signature moved into the margin. On the final completed renewal, the name had been scraped from the lawful column and rewritten beneath royal service attendants. Alda touched the cut fibers. Same correction knife. Because the same amendment was applied, Sabine said. Where is the amendment? The clerk searched the second volume. No commutation decree appeared. Only a servant-binding oath issued 9 days after the last Fenrose witness renewal. Sabine pointed to it. The family accepted hereditary service. This came after the witness oath. It replaced it. A servant oath can bind future labor. It cannot travel backward and erase a standing the crown already owed. The family swore obedience. A servant cannot be paid with the right her family already earned. A murmur moved through the delegates. Sabine faced Corven. This is becoming political theater. It became political when someone moved a lawful witness into the servant column, Alda said. The wolf shadow flickered. Corven's breath broke. Fear entered his expression, not of Alda, but of the emptying place inside himself. What stops the separation, he asked. A lawful renewal, the clerk said. There is no lawful witness, Sabine replied. A temporary witness may be seated while standing is disputed, provided the crown declares the placement procedural and not dynastic. Alda faced Corben. Witness is not bride. Do not make law easier by turning it into gossip. I did not. Your court will. Sabine stepped between them. Seating her will be read as recognition. Of a procedure, Alda said. Not of nobility. Corven looked at the wolf shadow, then at the cord cutting Alda's wrist. Alda Fenrose will occupy the witness seat for this inquiry. She receives no companion claim, no Luna standing, and no dynastic place. Not restoration, not justice. A temporary measure taken because his wolf was dying outside him. Record the limitation, Alda said. The clerk wrote it before she moved. Only then did Alda approach the seat. The wolf shadow watched her. It did not bow or touch her. It lifted one paw from the Fenrose name and stepped down. Alda sought. She had not been restored to honor. She had been placed where the king needed her pain to keep his wolf alive. The cold of the seat entered her bones. It felt older than furniture, older than rank, like a debt trying to remember the shape of the body it had used. The cord released her wrist. For one breath, the wolf shadow crossed the floor and returned to Corven. His body arched as darkness struck his chest. Color returned to his face. His wolf's pale eyes opened briefly behind his own. Corven's wolf did not return because Alda sat near him. It returned because the court had briefly stopped lying about where the witness belonged. Then the restored ledger snapped shut. A second silver line burned through the cover. The wolf tore halfway out of Corven again. Alda forced the book open. New words appeared beneath the stabilization oath. Blood debt for royal wolf survival transferred to Fenrose service. The line did not say who authorized the transfer. It did not say whether Fenrose consent had ever been given. It only proved that service had been written where payment should have stood. The court had not merely failed to pay the witness. It had converted the price of keeping Corven's wolf whole into the chains that made Alda a servant. The debt had not made Alda noble, it had made her service suspicious. The new silver line remained visible across the ledger, while Corven's wolf shadow hung half inside his body and half across the floor. Sabine read the words without changing expression. Transfer is not theft, she said. Blood debts are often converted into protection when a witness line lacks land enough to hold standing. Alda remained in the witness seat. The cold had settled into her spine. Each breath carried the metallic taste of moon silver. Protection from whom? Rival houses. Pacts that would use an unlanded witness line to challenge succession. And the protection required hereditary service? It may have. Then bring the transfer record. Sabine looked toward Corven. The king's wolf is unstable. This review should be sealed. Corven's shadow shifted against his ribs. Pain tightened his mouth. No. The answer came too quickly to be justice. He needed the record because the creature inside him was tearing itself apart. But the refusal was public. Alda rested her burned fingers on the ledger. The chair is not asking for love. It is asking for the missing price. Several nobles looked toward Corven as though love had contaminated the procedure. Witness, not bride, Alda said. Debt, not desire. The oath clerk opened the settlement index. Blood debt conversion required 3 marks. The crown's transfer seal, the witness line's consent cut, and a guardian's signature if any heirs were underage. What is a consent cut? Corven asked. A shallow blade mark made through both copies while the witness held the parchment. It proved presence and voluntary surrender. Alda looked at the scrape on her wrist. Standing cannot be converted into chains without a consent cut. Sabine folded her hands. Unless the line was legally incapable of consent. Children, minor heirs, or adults declared unfit under moon law. The clerk found a reference number. Fenrose transfer settlement. Sealed in the reign of King Halrin. He sent an assistant to the lower archive. While they waited, Corven's wolf shadow flickered. One pale eye opened beneath his boots. The creature did not look at Alda. It looked at the ledger. Corven gripped the table edge. You may return to the throne, Sabine said. The temporary seating has fulfilled the immediate renewal. If it had, Alda said, his wolf would be inside him. Sabine's gaze sharpened. You are enjoying the authority this gives you. No. I am measuring how quickly you call pain ambition when a servant refuses to stop asking questions. The assistant returned carrying a narrow gray case. The oath clerk broke the archive seal under Corven's command. Inside lay 2 settlement sheets. One bore the royal wolf crest. The other should have carried the Fenrose copy. Its lower edge had been trimmed. The clerk placed both beneath the witness lamp. The consent cuts should align here. They did not. The crown sheet carried a clean diagonal notch. The Fenrose sheet had no matching mark. Its corner had been shaved away. Damage during storage, Sabine said. Alda touched the fibers. Correction work. You see correction knives everywhere. I spent 12 years sharpening them. The clerk examined the edge. She is right. The parchment was pared after sealing. Corven looked at Sabine. Does the transfer remain valid without consent? If minor heirs were represented by a lawful guardian. The clerk turned to the second page. The servant binding oath had been entered 9 days after the transfer settlement. Alda pointed to the dates. The crown converted the debt first. Then it bound Fenrose service. The guardian may have accepted protection before formalizing service, Sabine said. Transfer is a clean word when the person losing standing is not allowed to sign refusal. Minor heirs cannot refuse lawful guardianship. Then who were the heirs? The clerk read from the margin. Lusa Fenrose, Age 11. Oren Fenrose, Age 8. Alda's throat tightened. Her grandmother had spoken those names once. 2 children taken into palace service after their parents died during a border winter. The crown housed them, educated them, and preserved the line, Sabine said. The crown inherited their witness and called the inheritance service. That is rhetoric. It is the only description matching the records. Corven's wolf shadow pulled farther from him. His body bent with it. Alda rose halfway from the seat, then stopped. If she left, the procedural placement might collapse. Stay seated, Corven said. It was not concern. It was command shaped by need. Alda lowered herself. I was not seated for honor. Do not forget that while you use this place to keep breathing. His eyes met hers. I have not forgotten. She could not tell whether that was truth or necessity. The clerk turned the settlement page over. A guardian line exists beneath the lower seal, but the signature has been scraped. Guardian identities were sometimes concealed to protect minors from political claims, Sabine said. Concealed is not erased, Alda replied. The result is the same. No. One protects a child. The other protects the person who signed for them. The wolf shadow struck the floor once. Not an attack. A refusal. Corven's voice roughened. Restore the guardian line. Sabine faced him. The restoration leaf already injured Alda. A second use may deepen the witness bind. Then use my blood. Royal blood would overwrite the guardian trace, the clerk said. Only the seated witness can recover it. Corven looked at Alda. He did not ask whether she wished to continue. Alda saw that failure clearly. Then she extended her burned hand. Record that the crown required a second restoration before restoring my standing. The clerk wrote it. Only then did Alda press her fingers to the silver leaf. Cold burned through the earlier wounds. The witness seat tightened around her bones. A line appeared beneath the scraped guardian field. Crown guardian to the surviving Fenrose heirs. Then the date. Then the signature. The handwriting was sharp, narrow, and exact. The same hand that had corrected Alda's seating ledger that morning. Sabina Thale. The signature did not prove confession. It proved something more dangerous. The woman who had cut Alda from the feast table had once signed the Fenrose children into hereditary service as their lawful protector. Sabine's signature did not prove she had stolen the Fenrose standing. It proved she had been the adult authorized to surrender it. The distinction mattered. Alda kept her burned hand on the restoration leaf while the witness seat held cold around her spine. Across the table, Sabine looked at her own name without flinching. I acted as crown guardian, she said. The Fenrose heirs were minors after their parents were removed from public office. Removed how? Alda asked. Under protection. That is not an answer. It is the legal one. Corven stood with his wolf shadow half joined to him. Darkness pulsed beneath his ribs each time the ledger remained open. What protection required hereditary service? He asked. Sabine turned toward him. The kind that prevents a disputed witness line from being taken by rival packs. Lysa and Oren Fenrose had no land, no adult guardian, and no defensible house. Service placed them beneath the crown. Beneath, Alda said. Not beside it. Children without standing survive by belonging to someone stronger. Then show the threat they were protected from. The oath clerk searched the settlement references. A guardianship transfer should have carried 3 supporting records: a declaration of danger, a list of assets preserved for the heirs, and a renewal date when the elder child reached lawful age. Only the declaration number remained. The asset column was blank. The renewal field had been scraped. Sabine folded her hands. Border records were often incomplete. These are palace records, Alda said, recorded during a border crisis. Convenient. Sabine's gaze cooled. You were not there. No. My family was busy becoming property. A murmur moved around the feast table. Corven's wolf shadow pulled against his chest. He closed one hand over the dark movement. Bring the declaration of danger. The clerk hesitated. It is held in the coronation archive. Sabine answered before Corven could. Then it is sealed against public reading. Why would the danger to 2 Fenrose children be filed with coronation law? Alda asked. Because royal wolf stability affected succession. The black wolf turned its pale eyes toward Sabine. Not accusation. Recognition of a phrase it had heard before. Corven saw it. What does their service have to do with my coronation? Sabine's expression remained composed. Nothing personally. The transfer became part of the standing laws every monarch inherited. Inherited law is still law someone chose to renew, Alda said. Sabine looked at her. You mistake continuity for choice? I copy royal decrees. Continuity is choice written by people who prefer not to sign twice. Corven ordered the coronation archive opened. The visiting alphas shifted uneasily. Coronation records contained the private limits placed on a king before his wolf accepted the crown. To expose them during a feast was to show where royal authority had once feared refusal. Sabine lowered her voice. Your Majesty, your wolf is already divided. Opening coronation law before rivals may weaken the throne beyond repair. Corven's face tightened as the shadow moved under his skin. The throne is already being held together by a woman whose standing it erased. He did not call the erasure wrong. Not yet. But he named the dependents aloud. The coronation keeper arrived with a black iron box and required 3 seals before opening it. Crown, oath clerk, seated witness. The 3rd seal had not been used in decades. Its silver surface held the Fenrose crescent. Alda pressed her injured thumb against it. Cold entered the cut. The seal accepted her blood and opened. Sabine watched without surprise. That frightened Alda more than denial would have. Inside lay the declaration of danger. The clerk read the heading, Royal Wolf Destabilization Following Witness Refusal. Alda leaned forward. Whose refusal? The next line had been scraped. The witness seat tightened beneath her. Corvin's wolf shadow shuddered. Sabine spoke calmly. A historic crisis. It does not establish wrongdoing. It establishes that the Fenrose transfer began after a witness refused something, Alda said, or failed to perform a required duty. What duty? Sabine did not answer. The clerk turned the page. A list of protections followed. Palace shelter, food, education, immunity from rival claim, and preservation of the Fenrose bloodline under crown custody. No land, no independent income, no right to leave service, no restoration date. This is not protection, Alda said. It is a cage with meals. It kept the children alive, and kept their witness standing available to the crown. The witness office had already failed. Then why preserve the bloodline? Sabine's eyes met hers. Because failed offices can still carry dangerous inheritance. Alda felt the first true edge beneath Sabine's restraint. Fear. Not of Alda as a woman. Of what Fenrose blood could force the court to remember. The clerk reached the renewal field. Beneath the scrape, a faint line remained. Majority review required when the elder heir reaches 16. Lysa Fenrose had entered service at 11. Alda searched the dates. There should be a review 5 years later. The clerk opened the next register. No hearing appeared. Instead, a continuance order had been copied into every coronation book that followed. Fenrose service remains necessary to royal wolf stability until released by the crowned alpha under seated witness review. Corven read the sentence twice. Released by the crowned alpha. Yes, Alda said, and reviewed by the seated witness, the clerk added. Sabine gestured toward the old seat. There was no lawful witness available. Because the crown had placed the witness family in service, Alda said. The review required the very standing the transfer removed. A perfect circle. No Fenrose could challenge the service without first possessing the seat. No Fenrose could possess the seat while classified as a servant. Corven looked toward his wolf. The creature's pale eyes stayed on the coronation box. What happened at my coronation? Sabine answered carefully. You inherited the continuance provision with every other standing law. Did I sign it? Every king signs the coronation articles. That was not my question. Silence hardened around the table. The clerk searched the newest volume. Alda watched Corvin's face before the page was turned. Something moved behind his eyes, not memory, but the pain of a place where memory should have been. The clerk found the article. Fenrose hereditary service continued for royal wolf preservation. Below it stood Corven Thale's signature. The ink was his. The witness line beside it was empty. Corven had not created the first chain, but he had renewed it without the witness whose absence made the renewal illegal. Corven's signature did not make him the author of Fenrose service. It made him the king who had renewed it without asking why no witness stood beside the page. The ink remained dark beneath the coronation lamp. Alda sat rigid in the witness seat while cold traveled into her spine. Corven stared at his own name, as though the hand that had written it belonged to another man. Sabine broke the silence. Coronation articles are signed as a single body of law. No king reads every inherited provision aloud. He reads enough to bind the kingdom, Alda said. The continuation was ministerial. A chain does not become ceremonial because the king signs it between more flattering pages. Corvin's wolf shadow pulled farther from his chest. One black foreleg formed across the floor, then collapsed into smoke. What was I told when I signed? Sabine's expression remained composed. You were told that the article preserved royal wolf stability. Was Fenrose named? The service line was, that was not my question. Alda saw calculation pass through Sabine's calm. The coronation rite limits what the crowned mind carries afterward, Sabine said. You know that. I know the wolf accepts burdens the man is not permitted to remember, Corven replied. Alda had copied references to the rite, never its mechanism. Kings emerged from coronation with authority, scars, and carefully shaped silence. Bring the right transcript, she said. No servant reads a king's coronation memory, Sabine said. Then restore me as witness. You are temporarily seated for inquiry. Exactly. Use the limitation you wrote. Corven looked at the coronation keeper. Bring it. The keeper did not move. Your Majesty, the transcript is divided. One docket records what the king retained. The other records what the wolf was ordered to carry. And the witness copy? Alda asked. There was none. The wolf shadow struck the floor. Corven bent over the table. Why? The witness office was vacant, Sabine said. No, Alda replied. The witness family was present in hereditary service. Service does not create standing. Your law removed the standing, then used its absence to erase the copy that might challenge the removal. Corven lifted his head, opened both dockets. The keeper brought two narrow cases from the iron box. The first held the retained coronation record. Corven Thale accepts the crown. Corven Thale binds the northern pacts. Corven Thale preserves continuity of service required for wolf stability. The wording was too clean. Alda touched the final line. This was copied after the rite. All retained records are copied after the king wakes, the keeper said. From whose notes? The crown guardian's. Every eye moved toward Sabine. She did not flinch. A guardian records the articles spoken while the king bears the crown. The second case contained black hide marked with silver claw cuts. Royal wolves do not sign in language, the keeper explained. The cuts record refusal, acceptance, and burden. One long acceptance line crossed the top. 3 shorter cuts showed burden taken into instinct. The final section had been burned smooth. What was removed? Alda asked. Damage during sealing, Sabine said. No, heated from the center. Black hide contracts unpredictably. So does a lie when someone measures it. The wolf shadow dragged itself toward the burned strip. Corven staggered after it as though an unseen chain joined them. The creature pressed its muzzle to the missing section. Not mate recognition. Memory seeking the place from which it had been cut. Alda placed her burned fingers beside the scorched hide. The witness seat answered with cold. A crown closing. A wolf resisting. A young king unable to breathe while voices warned that refusal would fracture the realm. Then a woman's voice. Controlled and near. Accept continuity. Let the wolf carry what the king cannot. Alda tore her hand away. Blood opened across her fingertips. What did you hear? Corven asked. Not enough to accuse anyone. Then say nothing, Sabine said. Alda wrapped her fingers in the severed place cord. I heard the right ask your wolf to carry a refusal your crowned mind was not allowed to keep. What refusal? The burned section should say. The keeper examined the hide. A witness restoration might recover the burden marks. No, Sabine said. The earlier restorations injured her and destabilized the wolf. You object now? Alda asked. I object to destroying the only possible witness before the inquiry is complete. It was a reasonable argument. That made it more dangerous. Corven looked at Alda's bleeding hand. Can you continue? I can. That is not the same as saying you have earned the right to ask. He accepted the answer. Record that she proceeds under protest. The clerk wrote it. Alda pressed the restoration leaf over the burned hide. Cold drove through her wrist and shoulder. The witness seat tightened around her ribs, forcing breath from her body. The first restored mark appeared. Royal Wolf refused continuation of Fenrose service. The court went silent. A second line formed. Crown Guardian petitioned emergency override. Sabine remained composed. An override petition is not unlawful. No, Alda said. It is only the request. The final mark emerged. Corven read it first. Override accepted by Crowned Alpha. His hand closed around the table. I accepted it. The wolf shadow lifted its head. One last line burned through the hide. Witness objection absent by reason of inherited service. The coronation had not merely hidden Corven's first betrayal. It had used the Fenrose chains to make sure no lawful voice could stop him from renewing them. The restored burden marks turned the feast from an inquiry into a challenge against Corven's coronation. The visiting alphas understood it at once. One rose from the northern end of the table. If the royal wolf refused an article the crowned alpha accepted, then the coronation was divided. Sabine faced him before Corven could answer. The override was lawful. Emergency crown provisions exist precisely because instinct cannot govern succession. Alda kept one hand on the witness seat. Instinct did not refuse the crown. It refused the continuation of Fenrose service. According to a damaged hide, restored through forbidden witnesscraft. According to the record your court preserved. Sabine turned toward the oath clerk. Is Alda Fenrose qualified to challenge a coronation article from which her own family may benefit? The clerk hesitated. A seated witness may raise a living objection where the original witness was prevented from appearing. She is also bound to royal service. That is the condition being challenged, Alda said. A servant cannot judge the chain she wishes removed. A crown cannot make its own theft impartial by calling the injured person interested. Corven's wolf shadow remained half outside him. Its shoulder lay across the stone while the rest strained beneath his ribs. The Northern Alpha watched closely. If the wolf cannot return, a regency hearing may be required. Corven lifted his head. No regency begins in my hall while I can still name the men requesting it. The Alpha sat. The effort cost Corven. Darkness pulled harder from his chest, and blood appeared where his fingers gripped the table. Sabine lowered her voice. Seal the review. Remove the rival houses. Resolve the witness question privately. The service was renewed in public law, Alda said. The objection belongs where the consequence was enforced. You want spectacle. I want witnesses. The oath clerk opened a narrow procedural volume. A living objection requires 3 declarations. The seated witness names the disputed act. The crowned alpha states whether the royal wolf accepted or refused it. Then the court must open the authority used to override that refusal. Sabine's expression tightened. The king is under physical distress. So is the witness, Alda said. The cold of the seat had reached her hips and shoulders. Her burned fingers had gone numb, and the cut at her wrist had begun bleeding again beneath the silver cord. Corven looked at the blood. What happens if she makes the objection? The witness seat will hold her standing until the challenge is answered, the clerk said. And if the challenge fails, she returns to service under the existing law. Alda understood the unstated part. If she failed, the court would not merely send her back behind the feast table. It would record that a Fenrose had challenged the chain and lost. No descendant after her could reopen it. Sabine understood as well. You may withdraw, she said. The Crown can review the transfer without risking the last surviving claim of your line. It sounded almost merciful. Alda had copied enough royal mercy to recognize a locked door with softer hinges. She placed her palm on the ledger. I challenge the continuation of Fenrose hereditary service as a debt transfer renewed without lawful witness consent. The silver cord tightened around her wrist. Pain climbed her arm. The witness seat did not reward courage. It required a body willing to remain present while power answered. The clerk faced Corven. Did the royal wolf accept or refuse the continuation? Sabine stepped toward him. Your Majesty, a wolf's burden marks are not human testimony. Corven looked down at the shadows struggling outside him. For years, he had ruled by claiming that crown and wolf were one authority. Now the truth of their disagreement waited in front of every rival house. My wolf refused it, he said. The words struck harder than an alpha command. Several nobles lowered their eyes. Others stared directly at him, measuring the weakness such honesty might create. The shadow's pale eyes brightened. It did not return, but it stopped tearing farther away. The clerk opened the emergency override petition. The third declaration requires the authority used to proceed despite refusal. Sabine answered, preservation of royal stability during succession crisis. Read the full provision, Alda said. The supporting language is restricted. Then the objection remains unanswered. Corven's voice roughened. Read it. The clerk unfolded the petition. Where the lawful witness line is unable to hold independent standing, the Crown may preserve royal wolf stability by placing that line under protected service. Sabine lifted her chin. There. Protection conversion. The clerk continued. Witness function may thereafter be drawn from service labor without conferring public seat, hereditary challenge, or dynastic recognition. Alda felt the cold beneath her become still. Read that again. The clerk did. Witness function may be drawn from service labor. The feast hall changed around her. For 12 years, Alda had copied treaties, restored missing clauses, compared seals, and corrected promises before kings signed them. Her work had not been ordinary clerical labor. The Crown had been using Fenrose witness function while denying Fenrose witness standing. Sabine spoke before the nobles could react. The provision separated necessary legal work from a politically dangerous hereditary office. It took the restraint and removed the person allowed to use it, Alda said. It preserved the kingdom. It preserved obedience. The clerk searched the attached schedules. 3 treaty renewals from Corven's first winter were entered under substitute witness labor. Corven looked at Alda. The border settlement. Yes, she said. The northern adoption bond. Yes. The grain surrender terms. Yes. His face changed with each answer. Those documents had prevented his reign from collapsing before its first thaw. He had praised the council. He had rewarded the noble negotiators. He had never asked whose hand recovered the clauses that made agreement possible. Sabine remained calm. The copyist was paid. Alda looked at her, with a servant ration and a place behind the court. Corven turned to the clerk. Who authorized the substitute witness entries? The clerk opened the first schedule. Crown Office. Whose signature? The page carried Corven's black seal beneath a short directive. Fenrose's hand accepted as documentary witness. Public seating unnecessary during emergency rule. The writing was his secretary's. The approval mark was his. Corven, read it without denial. Alda had not been excluded because her witness function was useless. She had been excluded because the Crown had learned how to use it without letting her stand beside the law. The clerk turned the final page. A second notation appeared beneath the directive. Witness labor renews royal wolf boundary for 1 blood moon cycle. The wolf shadow looked at Alda's wounded hand. Not with desire, with recognition of the labor that had been holding it together. For 12 years, the Crown had fed Corven's wolf with Alda's witness work while ordering her to stand behind the table. The revelation did not free Alda. It made every treaty she had saved vulnerable. Sabine understood the danger before the visiting alphas did. If substitute witness labor was invalid, she said, then the border settlement, the Northern adoption bond, and the grain surrender terms may all be challenged. Those agreements had ended the uprisings of Corven's first winter. Without them, 2 rival pacts could reclaim disputed land. An adopted heir could lose succession, and the southern grain houses could withdraw from the Crown. Corven's wolf shadow remained stretched between his body and the floor. Sabine faced him. You cannot condemn the instrument that preserved your reign without reopening everything it secured. Alda's hand remained on the ledger. Then reopen it. Several nobles turned toward her. You would risk civil war to improve your place at a feast? Sabine asked. My place is not the question. You challenged the service law that allowed your hand to witness those treaties. I challenged a law that stole witness work while denying the witness standing. The kingdom survived. So did I. Neither fact makes the method lawful. Corven looked at the 3 treaty titles. What happens if I void the substitute directive? The treaties do not vanish, the oath clerk said. They return to disputed status until lawfully witnessed or renegotiated. And if I leave it, the challenge remains open. The wolf boundary may continue to fail each blood moon cycle. Sabine folded her hands. Preserve the directive until the kingdom is stable enough for review. The Crown has used stability as a room with no door for 12 years, Alda said. The witness seat tightened around her ribs. Pain moved through her burned fingers and into her shoulder. It was holding her present while the court decided whether justice cost too much. Corven saw her breathing change. Can the procedure be paused? Not after the crowned alpha admitted the wolf's refusal. Sabine's voice softened. There is another option. Alda may return to protected service and continue documentary witness labor under sealed supervision. The wolf boundary would remain fed without forcing public restoration. The black wolf lifted its head. There it was. Use the witness. Hide the witness. Call the hiding protection. Corven looked at Alda. She did not mistake the conflict in his face for devotion. He was measuring a kingdom against the woman whose labor had helped hold it together. What would you require, he asked. Public standing for every act that uses witness authority. No more servant signature beneath sealed orders. No more witness labor without witness challenge. No renewal carried in a king's wolf while the person doing the work stands behind the table. Sabine turned to the rival alphas. She is demanding the power to reopen every royal oath her family ever touched. I am demanding the power the crown already used from us, without land, army, or noble blood to restrain it. Witness law restrains the witness too. The clerk nodded. A lawful witness may challenge, but cannot rule, inherit through the office, command soldiers, or claim companions standing by reason of the seat. Witness, not queen, Alda said. The northern alpha leaned forward. And who restrains the king when the witness is absent? No one answered. Corven straightened despite the shadow tearing at his ribs. Read my emergency directive. The clerk lifted the page. Fenrose's hand accepted as documentary witness. Public seating unnecessary during emergency rule. Corven looked toward Alda. Was that directive ever presented to you? No. Were you told your corrections carried witness force? No. Were you permitted to challenge the final clauses? No. His jaw tightened. Then the directive used authority she was forbidden to know she possessed. Sabine stepped toward him. You believed her a skilled copyist. You signed what prevented bloodshed. I signed a method that made refusal impossible. The wolf shadow pulled one foreleg back into his body. Only one. The court noticed. Corven placed his palm over the directive. I suspend this order before every house present. Sabine's composure sharpened. You suspend the legal witness basis of your own peace. I suspend the theft of standing used to create it. The feast hall went still. It was the first decision he had made that did not merely keep his wolf alive. It placed his reign at risk because the law beneath it had been built through Alda's silence. He still had not restored her family, but he had stopped calling the chain necessary. The clerk marked the directive suspended. At once, the black wolf returned another step into Corven. Its shoulder vanished beneath his ribs, leaving the head and one forepaw outside. So the creature rewards political surrender, Sabine said. No, Alda replied. It responds when the crown stops feeding on an unpaid witness. A southern grain lord rose. If the grain surrender terms are disputed, my house reclaims its levy rights. The original draft remains in the archive, Alda said. You expect us to trust the servant who copied it? No. I expect you to compare every version before witnesses. Sabine turned to Corven. Every defeated house will call itself cheated. Then every house may bring evidence. I will not answer law by hiding the person it requires. The words were not an apology. They were a boundary placed against his own convenience. The oath clerk opened the border settlement first. Alda recognized her work immediately. 3 clauses bore the careful corrections she had made during Corven's first winter, but one page did not. The ink matched her hand poorly. The letters leaned too far right. A copied Fenrose crescent had been pressed beneath the margin. Someone had imitated her witness mark after the treaty left her desk. Alda turned the page toward the lamp. The altered clause granted the Crown emergency authority to bind any witness line whose refusal threatened royal stability. Corven read the words. I never saw this clause. Sabine's gaze remained steady. Kings rarely remember every emergency provision. Alda examined the approval line. The false Fenrose mark was beside Corven's seal. Below both stood a second authorization. Crown Guardian, Sabina Thale. The woman who had signed Fenrose children into service had later used a forged Fenrose witness mark to make that service lawful. The forged Fenrose mark did not prove Sabine had written every false clause. It proved the Crown had accepted witness authority from a hand no Fenrose had given. Alda held the treaty beneath the lamp. The imitation crescent looked convincing at a distance. Up close, the lower stroke curved the wrong way. Fenrose witnesses cut toward the heart of the page so any later alteration would break the line. This mark curved outward, leaving the clause untouched. Sabine did not deny signing beneath it. Emergency guardianship allowed the Crown to validate documents when a protected line could not act independently. Then where is the order declaring Fenrose incapable? Alda asked. The hereditary service status established dependence. The dependence your signature created. The service settlement predates this treaty. By 9 days, which made it lawful. No, it made the timing useful. The visiting alphas shifted around the table. The argument was no longer about one servant's place. Every emergency clause Sabine had authorized could now be measured against a witness mark the witness family had never made. Corven's wolf shadow remained half outside him, its pale eyes fixed on the false crescent. What is required to challenge the mark? He asked. The oath clerk opened the founding procedure. A seated witness must compare the disputed cut against a living family mark. The crowned alpha must then declare whether he accepts the false authority or submits the clause to public review. Sabine faced Corven. If you submit it, every house harmed by emergency law may reopen its settlement. If I accept it? He asked. The clause stands. Fenrose service remains the legal witness instrument that preserved your first winter. Alda heard the trap clearly. Accept the forgery, and his reign remained orderly. Reject it, and the peace built through her stolen labor could fracture. Corven looked at her. What does the comparison cost? The living mark is cut in blood, the clerk said. If the challenge fails, the witness loses standing for 1 generation. Sabine's voice softened. Alda, no one requires this of you. The Crown can compensate service without destroying the legal foundation of the realm. Compensation is what power offers when it wants the benefit of truth without the consequence. You may lose the only standing your family has recovered. It was never recovered. It was borrowed while his wolf weakened. Corven did not deny it. Alda placed her left hand beside the forged crescent. The old seat tightened around her bones. "Bring the witness blade." The clerk presented a narrow silver knife. Corven reached for it. Alda closed her fingers around the handle first. "This is not yours to perform." His hand stopped. Another small refusal accepted without command. Alda cut the living Fenrose crescent into the margin. Cold pain climbed through her palm. Blood entered the groove, and silver light moved along the true mark. The difference became unmistakable. Her crescent crossed the claws and bound every later word to the original oath. The forge mark sat outside it, protecting the claws from witness refusal. The Northern Alpha stood. "That is not a failed copy. It was designed not to restrain the crown." Sabine remained composed. "It was designed for emergency use when no lawful Fenrose could be seated." "The law made sure none could be seated," Alda said. "The kingdom faced rebellion, and so you built peace from a witness who could not say no." Corven took the treaty from the lamp. His black seal remained beside the false mark. "I approve this." "You approved an emergency settlement," Sabine said. "You did not carve the witness sign." "I accepted its authority." "You were 19. 3 packs had refused your crown. Grain roads were burning, and Alda restored the clauses that ended it. She was a copyist. She was used as a witness." The wolf shadow drew one more limb into Corven's body. Sabine saw it. "Your wolf is responding to her presence." "No," Corven said. "It is responding to the truth I kept benefiting from." The court went silent. He placed the treaty on the table before Alda. "I submit the false mark and every clause resting on it to public review." Sabine's calm finally hardened. "You may lose the northern packs. Then I will negotiate without stealing a witness. You may lose the throne. Then the throne will learn what it costs to keep its word." The declaration was entered into the feast record. The forged clause dimmed. Corven's wolf shadow returned to him in a rush of black silver. He staggered as the creature struck his chest, then remained standing while its pale eyes opened behind his own. The witness seat released some of its cold from Alda's spine. Not all. The oath clerk turned to the servant-binding decree. "If the false clause supplied authority for hereditary witness service, the binding may now be suspended pending review." "Suspended?" Alda asked. "Not voided. The original guardian settlement still exists." Sabine lifted her chin. "Exactly. The children remained protected under lawful guardianship." Alda looked at the signed guardian line, then opened the age of majority review that should have released them. The clerk searched the attached register. A review had been scheduled for Lysa Fenrose's 16th year. The hearing record was present. Its judgment page was missing. Sabine spoke before anyone else. "Missing pages do not prove an unlawful decision." "No," Alda said. "But they prove the decision cannot bind descendants until restored." The clerk examined the binding. One page was removed cleanly. The thread was resewn. "By whom?" Corven asked. "No name remains." Alda turned the register beneath the lamp. The witness seat answered. Not with a full truth. With pressure. A second sheet had once rested against the missing page. Its ink had left a faint, mirrored impression on the surviving parchment. Alda angled the light. Words emerged backward. Fenrose majority petition denied. Reason. Witness freedom presents unacceptable risk to royal wolf obedience. The hall seemed to contract. Corven read the line twice. The original guardianship had not continued because the Fenrose heirs were unsafe. It had continued because a free witness could refuse the king. Below the mirrored judgment appeared one final instruction. Remove witness seat from Blood Moon law before the next succession. Sabine had not confessed. She no longer needed to. The law had recorded the motive her silence had protected. The missing judgment page had not erased the decision. It had only forced the court to read its shadow. Sabine stood at the far end of the feast table while the mirrored words remained visible beneath the lamp. "Risk to royal wolf obedience is not the same as fear of lawful witness," she said. "A divided crown during succession can destroy thousands." Alda kept her blood-marked hand beside the register. And so the court preserved obedience by preventing the witness from being free enough to refuse. The Fenrose heirs were children. They reached adulthood. The kingdom was still unstable. Then instability became the excuse that never expired. Corven's wolf was inside him again, but its pale eyes remained visible behind his own. It had returned because he submitted the forged authority to review. It had not forgiven the crown that used it. The oath clerk opened the final procedure. To void hereditary service, The crowned alpha must surrender every benefit renewed through that service until each oath is lawfully witnessed again. The visiting nobles began speaking as the border settlement, northern adoption bond, and grain surrender terms all became vulnerable. Sabine waited until the noise sharpened. There is the price. Alda may have her standing, or the kingdom may keep its peace. Alda looked at Corven. What happens if I void the binding? He asked. Your first winter agreements enter provisional review, the clerk said. Levy authority pauses. Disputed land cannot be seized. The adopted heir remains protected until lawful hearing. And the royal wolf? The stabilization oath must be renewed before a seated witness who is free to refuse. Sabine looked toward Alda. Give her freedom, and every rival house will purchase her refusal. A witness who can be purchased is corrupt, Alda said. A witness who cannot refuse is furniture. Corven removed the black and silver crown and set it beside the forged Fenrose mark. I inherited the first chain, he said. I renewed it. I accepted Alda Fenrose's work while denying the standing that made it lawful. I signed emergency provisions because they protected my reign, and I did not ask who had been made unable to object. This admission will be used against the throne, Sabine said. It should be. He faced the clerk. Void Fenrose hereditary service. Suspend every clause witnessed through the substitute directive. Convene lawful review for each affected treaty. Until then, no levy, land transfer, or service order may rely on those pages. The Northern Alpha rose. You place your crown beneath a servant's challenge. No, beneath the law, my crown removed to avoid being challenged. The clerk opened the service decree. The witness seat tightened around Alda, drawing cold through her bones. The silver cord pulled toward the page as though the old chain had found its last place to hold. Fenrose's consent is required, the clerk said. The crown bound children without consent, Alda replied, but needs mine to return what it took. Record that release is not a gift requiring gratitude, Corven said. Her mark acknowledges identity, not surrender. Only then did Alda press her living crescent across the decree. The silver cord broke. Not with thunder. With the small sound of thread snapping after being pulled too long, cold left the witness seat. The servant binding words faded, revealing the older provision beneath them. Fenrose standing protected from crown ownership. Sabine closed her eyes once. When she opened them, there was no confession in her face. You will fracture the court, she told Corven. Then it will be rebuilt with witnesses. He removed Sabine from guardianship authority and ordered an independent review of every scraped witness column, emergency clause, and substitute mark carrying her signature. She surrendered the ceremonial shears and left under guard, still believing history might call her methods necessary. The oath clerk restored the original feast law before every house present. The lawful witness shall be seated before crown, blood, mate, heir, or warlord. The witness may refuse. The witness may not be bound into hereditary service. The witness seat confers no companion claim, dynastic right, or royal marriage. Alda made him read the final line twice. Then she stood. Corven's wolf remained inside him. Will you renew the stabilization oath? He asked. Not tonight. A murmur moved through the hall. Corven did not silence it. You have begun removing the chain, Alda said. You have not repaired what it held. What will the oath require? A free witness, public access to every clause, protection that cannot be withdrawn when the answer is no, and a king willing to hear refusal without calling it betrayal. I will meet those terms. You will prove them. The feast ended without music. Over the following months, Corven reopened the 3 agreements before every affected house. He surrendered disputed levy income, returned 2 border estates to neutral custody, and allowed the northern adoption bond to be witnessed without crown pressure. Each correction weakened his control. Each one made his wolf quieter. Alda did not return to the servant archive. She established an independent witness chamber with low-born, noble, and outer-pack clerks. No royal decree entered law without a visible witness column and recorded refusal procedure. At the next blood moon feast, the table was circular again. Alda entered wearing no servant cord and no luna silver. The witness seat stood beside the crown because law required restraint near power. Corven rose when she approached, not as a king receiving a bride, as a ruler acknowledging the person permitted to tell him no. Alda sought. His wolf stayed within him. The renewed oath was placed before them. No crown shall draw witness labor from a person denied witness standing, Corven read. Alda examined every clause, then cut her crescent through the final line. Witnessed. After the court emptied, Corvin found her beneath the moon arch without his crown. I have no lawful reason to ask you to stay. That is the first reason worth hearing. I cannot undo the years you stood behind my table. No, I can spend the years ahead making certain no one stands there again. That is duty. Yes, he did not disguise it as love. Then he asked, when duty is finished for the day, may I walk with you? Trust had not returned with one public choice, but he had learned to ask where once he had commanded. Alda opened the door beside her. You may walk. Do not mistake that for leading. Corvin stepped through after her. This time, the king followed the witness.